Hello, everyone. A very, very good afternoon. And thanks for joining the EV Digi Expo being organized by Crescendo Worldwide. And this afternoon, I'm honored and privileged to be here moderating this particular session with some of the eminent thought leaders, not just thought leaders, but action doers and experts who are leading the EV revolution forward, right, in our country. So let me quickly set the context for today's discussion. This is Rajiv Vayasar, and I've been an EV evangelist for the past, I would say, 5-6 years. Right now, Chief Mentor for EV Masterclass, Vice President for Ito Motors Business Development Sales. Also mentor on board with multiple incubators such as T-Hub, ISB Hyderabad, IIT Madras, IIT Kharagpur, IIT Bombay, IIT Goa, all these entrepreneurship cells. And I myself am bachelor's and master's from IIT Madras 2010 batch, and I've been into the automotive for the past, I would say, 12 years, and very recently to EVs. I think we have heard of the comments, right, that most of the Indian standards were the general reflection of the European norms. Whether it is BS3, we know where it is originated from, or BS4, or the BS6 that we are talking about. In fact, there were many comments and many speculations that were very openly and publicly demonstrated by people now and then. That do we do anything original? Can we bring policies which can actually set as a precedence for the rest of the world to follow? I think those were the questions while we were dealing ICE vehicles. But let me tell you, if at all there is any country, if at all there is any market, if at all there is any maker in this world right now which has got the potential to be the world's largest maker and market from the EV perspective, undoubtedly, let me tell you, that's our Indian market. Hamara Bharat Mahan. Well, I'm not making these statements just to motivate or inspire people. How many of us know that the first ever policy of delinking a glider from its battery to be registered on roads and to be run on roads was an initiative by the Indian government nowhere across the world? How many of us know that for the first time, the EV charging infra facility is being offered as a service, also as a retail, extending it to domestic, right, players as well as households? Nowhere in the world but in India. Indian market is very value conscious and very innovative. We don't necessarily take the path that is often traveled by the rest of the markets. We pave our own path when it is required. With this as a context, let me welcome you all to this wonderful high-octane panel discussion on industry's perspective on government policies for EVs, where we discuss the good points, where we also highlight areas to be improved. And join with me are the panelists while I give a brief round of introduction of each one of them. I will also allow a few seconds, probably 30-40 seconds for each one of them to talk about themselves and their role. To begin with, Mr. Anupam Bhattacharjee, Vice President, Tata Technologies. Dr. Dev Mukherjee, Managing Director, Omega Siki Private Limited. We are also joined by Mr. Praveen Kumar, Chief Technology Officer, GoEgo Networks. And of course, right, Rajiv Vayasar, your moderator for today. To begin with, Mr. Anupam Bhattacharjee, please kindly introduce about yourself and what is it that you're leading through the Tata Technologies, and right, and maybe then we will pass on to the other panelists for their brief introduction. Yes, thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Rajiv. It was really an electric start, and I must say you have started really well. And we all have to keep up to that, expectation and that tempo. So I will definitely try to put my perspective into this. So actually, I have two hats. One is the role that I am taking, I have in Tata Technologies. The other role is the research that I do in Indian Institute of Management on electric vehicles. And luckily, both the places I am connected with electric vehicles. Previously, I had worked with auto OEMs, not only in India, but across the globe. In India, I work with Mahindra and Tata Motors, and across the globe as service provider, I work with most of the auto OEMs that we know all about. I also was fortunate enough to talk about electric vehicles and their applicability in India about 10 years back in United Nations, where I had mentioned about the necessity of converting commercial vehicles or taxis into electric vehicles, because these 20% category of vehicles actually contribute 80% of the pollution that was there. At that point of time, not many people were there who were actually advocating electric vehicles. But from that day to this day today, where it is now in the central stage, I think I have seen a lot in last 10 years, and so happy to be here and talking about this. I'm sure by 2030, government has taken a sort of target of 30%, but we will end up doing much earlier. And in certain segments, I'm very sure it will be 100% by that time.
Thank you, Mr. Anupam. Look forward for the discussion. Dr. Dev, I know the industry needs no introduction, but yes, for the sake of formality, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Rajiv, for your kind comments, and you've really given a very impactful and really electric start. So thank you very much for having me. I've been in the auto industry for almost 35 plus years, and I've worked with auto components industries in India and abroad. And around 2015, like Anupam said, I started looking at the electric vehicle or non-fossil fuel vehicles, and it was starting in Europe and being talked about, and Tesla was just coming up, and there were lots of different views. But I could see that this is it's going to happen. And I used to advise a very large Indian business group, a $5 billion Indian group those days. And I took the project to them, and the chairman listened to me for an hour or so. And then he said, no, Dave, India is not ready. So, but I was convinced, and that's how I started working. And our formal journey into the vehicle journey started in 2018 with Omega Seki. And we are trying to do our bit to be a part of this, and I'm very happy to be in the company of illustrious people like yourself, Anupam and Praveen, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Deb. And yes, Mr. Praveen from GoEgo Networks, please introduce yourself and go ahead, please.
Yes, Rajiv. So I do second that your pitch was really electrifying, and just a matter of fact, the punchline for our company is stay charged up.
Wow!
And actually, you've given the enough dose for me to stay charged up for the whole session. So thanks for that, and thanks Anupam and Dev also for the good introduction. See, from GoEgo Network perspective, I'm one of the co-founders. And I'm also heading the technology and the CEO operations part. But coming to India last year, running this as a business for our own, I don't come from the automotive background, but I do come from the technology part. I was in Netherlands, based in Netherlands. I was living there for 11 years. But I was driving in an electric car since 2016 for no good reason. The good reason was that, someday I had the discussion that we should not pollute at home. We should not pollute the environment. And that took the route that I had to buy an electric car and I had to start driving. I also had solar panels. So one of my co-founders at that time came up with the idea that can we build this technology for ourselves through Make in India. The part you mentioned that do we have original something? So I wanted to answer that the CPMS or CSMS solution, which you say, we have built it ourselves. And at this moment, we are probably the only certified company, not compliant, certified company in India. The team is here. The boys are working next to this room where I am sitting now. So we got the certification as well. And not only that, also the hardware part also, we have built it ourselves. And time for India has come, as I mentioned in the last week also. There is no standards for two-wheeler charging or three-wheeler charging in the world, because this is not a problem for the Goras at this moment. They drive four-wheelers most of the time. So for us, time has come to take the stage. make the standards which was mentioned by Randir Singh in the last week session, and really take this outside India also, and take the rights, how to say, space for technology part, and proving that we can do something original, to answer Rajiv what you mentioned. I think I will stop here from the introduction perspective.
Perfect. Perfect.
Am I audible?
Thank you. Yes, you are audible. You are audible. Please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to. So you, I mean, I think I'm done from the introduction perspective.
Thank you, Praveen. And let me start with you. You made such an interesting, I would say, comments, and I would like to call you as a person from the future, right? Because Netherlands is one such market.
Indeed.
One such market where India aspires to be, and we have more than, I would say, 30-40% of penetrations of EVs across. I mean, Netherlands is the leader in terms of adoptability to the world, right? So let me ask you, let me start with you, Mr. Praveen. Now, from the industry perspective, right, as an EVSE manufacturer and with a mode of staying charged, right, what are your expectations? What are your expectations from the government from the perspective of an EVSE manufacturer? Please go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to also thank government. I think, as they mentioned, that the government has a very consistent push towards the policies, and government is doing a lot, especially if I see from the, I call it demand side, where when I say demand, it's the EVs. There are a lot of good policies, the good perks, the subsidies, the discounts. Whereas from the EVSE side, and being the manufacturer of, let's say, EVSE, my demands will be to have also make the throughput time for me less. I take almost 6 months to install a PCS, just because of the approval of load sanction, who is going to do the bodies I need to find, the liaising body, and everything what happens when you have to get the approval when you're working with a, let's say, government department. The throughput time is too long. I think this is with this, I cannot install 100,000 chargers in 1 year or 2 years time. So this is something which we have to address. I think also for the to keep India ahead in this technology curve, it requires a lot of push towards also the R&D, because the products we have the specification, but you could really customize it. As you mentioned, it's very cost sensitive market. We have to continuously do the research and development to bring the cost down. And being a startup, I have limited funding. So I need something from the government where I could survive with the technology and the people we have. I need some kind of support that I could keep doing this and keep up my R&D to the level where we can really make India proud. Also from the EV charging. So these, if you ask me, these are the two distinct demands I have from the government, from the EVSE perspective.
Thank you, Praveen. I think there cannot be more practical ask than this. Absolutely true. While the government is trying its best to bring the right symphony and the coordination among the needed, I would say, stakeholders, but yes, on the ground applications, when you actually go in setting up a public charging stations, and then you talk to different municipalities, and you talk to DISCOMs, and you talk to all these players, it still appears that they are still in silos, and yes, that is definitely resulting in longer throughput time. Thank you very much for highlighting the actual things. And yes, a lot of push for R&D and the support for startups is required. At this point of time, I really want to understand the perspective from an OEM, right? Like Omega Seiki, right? So while the EVSE very, very clearly asked that we need, I would say, support in terms of bringing down the throughput time and better coordination and better channeling of the efforts, right? What, according to you, are your expectations from an OEM perspective, Dr. Dev?
Thank you very much, Rajiv. And I think Praveen has highlighted a very important point. See, in all, put together, it boils down to the ease of doing business, or I think we have to go few steps further of comfort of doing business. And as far as the EV is concerned, I can say that government has been very consistent, even in their first term, starting from there. And in terms of their sort of vision to get into or bring the alternate fuels to India, and transportation obviously is a major area where you need to make the change, because it also happens to be the major contributor to the environment pollution, etc. So from that perspective, I think this is the first time that we are seeing the government's consistent support on the supply side as well as on the demand side. On the supply side, we have various PLIs, FAME 2 incentive, etc. On the demand side, again, there is a PLI and support for setting up the infrastructure. Now, certain pieces of the whole pie are still to be figured out. For example, financing being one, then the cell manufacturing and the whole raw material supply chain for the cell, because you see the scale will not come at a level that the government is talking about, and in such a short period of time, unless you have a robust supply chain. And these kind of supply chain, for example, battery manufacturing, etc., which is non-existent in India, it takes decades to set up and also mature and get that kind of robustness when you have to when you are able to comfortably make 1 million cars, for example. So I think we need to do a lot of work in setting up the entire supply chain. This is where government has to sort of roll out a roadmap as to you see, PLI is there to manufacture cells, but how will you make the cells? Where are the materials coming from? Material availability is nil. So a lot of political, diplomatic channels, etc., will have to be opened up to, if we are talking about something like 100 gigawatt hours of capacity by 2030. Looking at the way the numbers are being talked about. So this is great. But at the same time, government's fiscal policies are really in place, and we are seeing actually being rolled out, being delivered, and there is a mechanism in place. Of course, fine tuning is always required, because India lives in different centuries in several parts. So for example, in some states there is a lack of awareness at the RTO level. He is asking, ye kya hai, what kind of, and how to register it, etc. So unless you don't have the registration, you can't upload on the Vahan, or you don't do that, you don't get the subsidy, etc. So those are procedural issues where I again come back to that point of ease of doing business. But overall, I think there are a couple of things, if I have to sort of summarize my answer to your question. One is that, the pillars of the industry will rely on starting with the raw material part of it. Then there is a capital equipment manufacturing, which never happened, part of it never happened in IC engine also. For example, we do not have a die making or mold making industry in India. There are only a few players, and 90% of the dies and molds are still imported from China, Taiwan, Japan, etc. So unless you have that, you can't have a robust industry, globally competitive industry, which I think India has a great chance to do. I think this is where initiative like semiconductor manufacturing is a fantastic initiative by government, and I think if that happens, then we are nearly there. And also the whole R&D coming of stakeholders together, academics and all that. And Anupam mentioned you also work with the institutions. So I think this is how that portion of the gaps in the supply chain can be filled up. These various stakeholders have to come together. Government is doing its bit, and I'm very happy to see that, with all the demand incentivization happening, the the supply side incentivization happening. So this is great. So I think few pieces of the puzzle are still missing, which need to be put in place gradually.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dev. I think there cannot be, I would say, from an OEM perspective, you have really called out the important aspects. Number one, how do we make these products accessible to the common man? And definitely financing plays a very, very strong role. Number two, yes, the government is trying to fix up a puzzle, but there are still a lot many, I would say, missing links that are still there. And I hope that right, most of those things get streamlined. And definitely you appreciated the point of the government initiatives from the PLI perspective. But yes, and you have tactfully also identified the gap, right? Yes, the funds are given, but then how do we solve the actual problem? I think there cannot be a greater clarity than this. But at this point of time, it is of an excitement and I would say anxiety to me. While we heard two great startups, right, that is GoEco and Omega Siki, speak about their expectations, it is very interesting to understand what could be the expectations, right, from one of the leaders who have been existing for decades together and really spread the wings across the world. In fact, took the name of not just Tata as a brand, but wherever Tata goes, the brand India also goes. So very interesting to understand what perspective that you bring, Anupam, to the table, and what do you think are the expectations from the government from different perspectives?
Thanks, Rajiv. Before I get into what government should do, I think I will give a holistic perspective from an auto OEM's perspective. Now, what Praveen said, Dr. Dev touched upon the supply side, and of course, some portion which is also connected to the auto OEMs. Praveen talked about the OEM of charging infrastructure, but a very interesting hinge point is auto OEMs. Now, I have been researching on this, and actually I found 4 Ps. Now, when we talk about 4 Ps, we always talk about Kotler's 4 Ps of marketing. I think all of us have read about that, have studied that. But I found there are very interesting 4 Ps out here. Of course, 1 P is common, which is the product. I will elaborate on that. But the other, Ps are like one is positioning. The second one, I will again explain. Third thing is partnership. Now, it is not about only partnership between 1 or 2. It is about government, private, government. I mean, there are many partnerships that are required, because none can do everything in this journey. This is a journey. Everybody needs to actually collaborate to come to something meaningful. And last but not the least is the policy. Now, there are multiple things. So quickly, I will go one by one into these 4 Ps. And also set where we are and what we can do in future. Okay, and how government can actually help in spreading our wings in this space. I'm only restricting myself to India because this discussion is all about India. So let me first talk about the product. Now, when we talk about the product, it is about the automotive, the car, the truck, the small truck, the pickup, or the semi-truck. Now, when I talk about the product, it is not, electric vehicle is not a product which is the old product minus the engine plus the battery and motors. It is much beyond that. Today, people are talking about software-defined automotive, where the features do not come first, features come later. You create the platform and pull in the feature when and where it is right time to push, or whatever use cases come up later. But these technologies are not easy to do. And because of our country's software background and open source background, I think we are very well poised to become the back office of the world automotive industry in this space. Okay, so that is one. I can give say quick example of what software defined car can do. Say, for example, a tire wear. Now, tire wear sometimes is a very problem we all face. Now, in Tesla, about a month back or 2 months back, there was one indication on the dashboard, touchscreen, dashboard. It was showing that some tire is wearing off. Now, it was not there earlier. They had pushed this feature. Actually, what had happened is they're taking the RPM of each and every wheel and seeing one wheel that was running at a higher RPM. So they could make out that there is a tire wear in that particular wheel. Now, this is a feature that has come after 10 years of launch of Tesla. But this is the kind of platforms they have created, and auto OEMs are far away, and people are getting into this kind of things. So my point is, we have the strength if it is supported with government initiatives. This can be, we can be actually the back office for the world car manufacturers. This is one area. And when I talk about positioning, no, it is about if an auto OEM wants to come into the market, which is that area, sweet spot that he should come in. Say, for example, there are semi trucks, there are premium cars, there are entry level cars, there are pickups, which is that place. But if you see, Tesla started with, of course, the premium car segment. Many others, I will not name people, they tried in that segment, but they failed. But if you see Rivian of today, they have come into truck, small truck, or in our country, we talk about pickups. And they are hugely successful, not in terms of market penetration, because they are yet to sell big numbers, but at least in terms of valuation, they are 100 billion plus. So people are betting on them for future. So it's very important that which segment, even if you see Tata Motors, they have not got into small car with the first electric car. They have come into Nexon, which is an sort of SUV. So this is also very important from an OEM perspective. Third thing is about partnership. Now it will touch upon Praveen's area, and Dr. Dev talked about the supply chain integration and all that. It will come into this. Now just imagine a lot of automotive manufacturers across the globe. Say, for example, you talk about Fisker. Now their cars, they are not making. It is Foxconn. Okay, now if you are an auto company which needs to actually produce cars and sell into the market, you might have to have a partnership with companies like Foxconn. Say, for example, charging infrastructure. No auto company can create charging infrastructure for the entire country. Tesla, of course, is there in charging infrastructure, but if you see, Biden is talking about 500,000 charging infrastructure, but Tesla will be in, hardly of that total thing. So unless otherwise auto OEMs have this partnership in terms of charging infrastructure, it is impossible. Like in India, Praveen's company and many other companies who are there into this, and connecting all these companies through apps or through some mechanism, so that every charging infrastructure is available, visible to all the auto users. That's very important. One last example I want to give about one motor company. Now there's a company called Nidec. They are one of the smartest motor manufacturers in the world. Now they of course make the vibration motor in iPhones and all that. So they are coming up quite big way in the electric vehicle. So is there any, I'm just giving one example, random example. There are many other companies. I'm just saying, this kind of partnerships, which are, of course, long-term, and battery partnership, Tesla, Panasonic and all that. So, these are the partnerships which are extremely important for long-term planning, survival, and market development. My last P, which is the discussion of today, is about the policy. I think we all are aware that there is a pull and push happening with our government, with Tesla. Our government is very clear on our Make in India policies. Now, there are, of course, EV policies, which are state government-led policies. There are policies which are, central government-led policies. There are many policies for batteries and, auto OEMs and all that. So everything put together, are these, policies good enough? In my opinion, yes, good. And we know that Tesla, what is happening? Government is saying that you manufacture out here and you will get the SOP. It is not that you get the SOP and you import it from somewhere else.
Yeah,
I think that's a very important point. This, in the long run, supports our country, as well as the Make in India initiative, which is a long-term initiative irrespective of electric vehicles.
Thank you. I think these are interesting propositions which you made, Anupam. I really like the way you place them, right? Product positioning, partnership, and policies. And I'm sure most of the panelists and the participants and all the ecosystem players right now agree with me that electric vehicle is no longer an automobile alone. It is basically an electrical electronics product. And with the IoT really at the best of its health at this point of time, a lot can be done. And no wonder Tesla comes up with such kind of innovative solutions, and many such solutions can come. And India already boasts itself as an IT capital of the world. right, can do even greater magic, as you rightly mentioned. Now, at this point of time, let me revert and circle back to Mr. Praveen on this particular point. So, Mr. Praveen, please help me understand, right? Now, when you're talking about the actual execution of 1 lakh plus charge points across the country, right? That's the vision that you're actually moving forward. Now, the recent interoperability which was announced as part of the budget, where the government said that they would like to focus upon and then channelize certain funds to build the interoperability and other things. Definitely, from the prima facie, it kind of appears as if it is trying to aggregate the whole demand and bring. But I want to understand from your perspective, what is your perspective on this interoperability, and is it just sufficient or something else also is needed to enable that 1 lakh vision of yours being implemented, please?
So Rajiv, thanks for bringing this point, because I think this is something which I was super happy that when the government of India announced about this. Whereas I think it's limited in terms that the thought process behind, at least from my understanding, that was for battery swapping facility. Whereas the interoperability should be for complete charging infrastructure and charging experience. Whether you do a battery swapping or you do let's say you go to a charging station and you charge. So if you look the four-wheeler industry at this moment on the AC charging, which is the slow charging, the OEM side, there is a standard that people are using Type 2. So for me as a OEM for manufacturing EV/AC, it is much easier. I could do a lot of combination because I know the OEMs are there, they are committed that these kind of connectors are there and you're there. But the same kind of standardization is not there for two-wheelers. Whether you take the Okinawa or you take Bajaj Chetak or you take something. Now there is a specification called Bharat AC 001. Which comes with industrial socket 15 amperes. I have put more than I think 400 outside installed. If you look, there are a lot of two-wheelers which comes only with 3-pin sockets. So what I had to do, actually I had to replace those connectors, 15M sockets with this, because I built it, I got this ARI certified as per the specs, whereas the market is not there. So I had to really send people physically. You can imagine as a startup how much operationally overhead. And then we decided that, okay, now the new ones will come with 3 2-pin sockets and 1 with the industrial socket, just to have this sorted out. So now this is the part on the EV/AC side, but also on the two-wheeler side, the connector, that is also not standardized. So I hope as part of this initiative, that the other side of the connector standardization, because I think in the last week Randhir Singh did mention that the connector is also part of the standard and standardization, that this will be taken into consideration, because if that is really done, I think this will also help the complete charging infrastructure. And the second point which you asked, that what other than the interoperability, what do we need to do more? So as a company now, let's say for GoEgo, we do test this. With the Plugfest event. Unfortunately, this is also originated or designed, let's say in Netherlands or Europe, but a lot of companies do participate from India also and from abroad. So we do participate there from the hardware perspective and also from the software perspective to test our chargers and also to test the software systems are working fine. But the part which is currently missing and which will give us the right, momentum for us to move to electric vehicle is the smart BMS. That's not there, because at this moment when the vehicle is connected to the charging station, their data communication can happen, but that will only happen when the smart BMS and I start getting data. And that's the time, as I think Anupam mentioned, that whether the one of the wheel is wearing off. Those kind of features, I have the platform, but I need also to have this communication in place to push this kind of features also to my customer on the network. So
Thank you.
That's a missing piece on top of interoperability that we need to solve that.
Thank you, Praveen. Now, this actually gives me a different, I would say, insights, and let me bounce it off with my good friend Dr. Dev. So we saw, at least in the four-wheeler segment, the world is already divided. GB by T, CCS, CHEDEMO, and Super Tesla chargers. And now we are trying to build something more for the Indian standards. Now, Dr. Deb, help me understand. While there could be multiple, I would say, intentions, both good or bad, while that happened for a four-wheeler and the above four-wheeler industry, do you think we should allow the Indian OEMs also to take a similar path for two-wheelers and three-wheelers where everybody has their own things? Or probably they should work a much more in closer tandem, right? Derive standard, I would say, interfaces, derive standard connectors, derive standard protocols, and then say, hey, for the benefit of the industry, for the betterment of the industry, for the penetration of the industry, even to the deeper levels, let's not fight against one another, but let's fight together. Do you think there is a need for it? And if so, as one of the leaders of the OEM, what would be your call both to the industry and to the government?
No, very correct. I think this is a very serious problem, and it is going to become even more serious as the volumes kick in and the kind of numbers that we are talking about. I'm talking particularly in the context of two-wheelers and three-wheelers, 20 million two-wheeler production. Even if 20-30% changes, shifts, then even then we have a humongous number of vehicles on the road. Three-wheelers, similar story. The point here is that this is this is largely rural, semi-rural, and also the a two-wheeler is like the entry-level car for a person, when he starts his job or starts or has sufficient savings. So first thing he goes for is a vehicle is a two-wheeler. So we need to respect that, and apart from saying that you can have 100,000 chargers or few 100,000 swap stations or rapid charging, etc., which is great, but at the same time you should be able to charge, you should be able to interoperate, and have go to any swap station, go to any charging station and get his vehicle charged. So it's like filling up petrol from Indian Oil or Bharat Petroleum or Hindustan Petroleum, you don't really bother about it. So this is a problem which is going to be coming soon. I see this, unfolding in a big way as the numbers starts becoming more and more. And it is the responsibility of the industry to take care of it before it happens. We need to be able to sort this out in the technology side of it, and support technology of, like Praveen mentioned, the data collection, data monitoring, data analytics, and 100% connectivity online, etc., is there to support it. On your cell phone app, you are able to check, where is the nearest charging station available, etc., etc. But what will you do if the charging station does not support your vehicle in terms of connectors or cable or whatever? So I think at industry level, some sort of joint effort or a consortium level effort should be done very soon, because this is two-wheeler, three-wheeler are predominantly India specific or vehicles, or where we have a large population depending on these vehicles. Three-wheeler particularly is a commercial vehicle. You earn your living using that vehicle. And similarly, if you go to rural areas, two-wheeler is like the entry-level car. For a guy, he travels with his family, with even uses it for transportation of goods as well. So I think that is a segment which will get adversely impacted if these standardizations are not in place. So I think this is very, very important, and we need to take the industry needs to take a call on this. I think this is high time. We need to have some sort of consortium with a steering committee or member of experts from the industry, academic, researchers, government, etc., and come up with a solution, and also India-specific solution. Something which may work in UK may not work here, because India changes every 50 kilometers. You know, you go out of Delhi or Mumbai, it's a different India. You go another 100 kilometers, it is again different. So what I'm saying is, this is a very practical problem that you have highlighted, and industry and the whole other stakeholders need to come together and sort this out. Also, a small point I would like to make here is that we are all talking about the opportunities available, economic opportunity, technological opportunity, business opportunity, etc. We also need to focus on the human resource side of it. We need to get the people readiness, the employable people in this new landscape, and I think all these are sort of interconnected in terms of technology readiness, product readiness, standardization, and the human resource readiness side of it. So that's my take on this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dev. I think I must really appreciate for the openness with which you spoke, that yes, while we ask so much from the government, there are certain responsibilities which the industry needs to perform, and this is definitely one. And we have come almost towards the end of the session, and let me sum up wonderful insights shared by Mr. Anupam, Mr. Praveen, and Dr. Dev. Right, I think it all started with the ask that while the government is working at a holistic level and at a central pivotal level, right, but then there requires a more coordination among the ministries, among the departments, especially where the things are happening on the ground zero, level zero on the ground. I think that's a clear ask. And then the other thing is, though we see that roughly 3,700 crores have been allocated through this National Automotive Testing and Research Infrastructure, right, project, that is NATRIP. But again, that is almost again has the shades of an ICE testing of test tracks and roads. But yes, more of testing facilities needs to come to test the electronic components, to test the softwares, to test those embedded components, and to test all of these BMS systems, right? I think so that way a lot of push in terms of R&Ds is required. That's a clear ask at a perspective. And also, interestingly, can there be a support to specific startups who are trying to solve and attempt this problem? I mean, 400 chargers being installed and reworked upon to change the connectors, I know is a Herculeus and unwarranted task, right? Which is a non-value added task. I completely empathize with the pain GoEgo had to undergo through. And of course, not to forget about the need to pitch in and fix the issues of financing, the issues of cell manufacturing, the issues of building the and setting up the entire ecosystem for the supply chain, right from the raw material, capital equipment, demand creation, to multiple points as highlighted by Dr. Dev. And most importantly, right, the 4P framework of product positioning, partnership, and policy, which of course is the need of the hour for Indian, I would say, EV ecosystem, not just to flourish and accelerate, but then to set a leading, I would say, stature and gesture to the rest of the world to follow. With this, I really want to thank all the eminent panelists who have joined and then shared your wonderful insights. I personally learned a lot from my industry peers, and I'm sure the audience and then the people who are watching live were equally benefited. Thank you very much for sparing your time despite your business and busy schedules. And thank you once again for Crescendo Worldwide for giving us this opportunity. Again, all these are smaller steps we take towards taking the EV revolution forward, right? That's why the industry is always keen when such opportunities come. And with this, Rajiv YSR signing off, always willing to help, support, and nurture the cause of leading the electric mobility revolution forward in India. Thank you very much, and all the very best. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rajiv. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Dr. Dev.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.